It seems like you live and breathe football. So is there something completely non-football related that interests you? People yelling Jared Goff everywhere, at hockey games, at basketball games.
We didn't make it to the NCAA championship this year. So look, me and Dan will do the necessary work to get better.
It has been an incredible season for the Detroit Lions. We're now in the off season. It also happens to be Black History Month.
Yeah.
And along the way, combing through all the accolades and awards for the Lions, there's back-to-back Executive of the Year awards for you.
Yeah.
From the Professional Writers Association. You are the first African-American to win this ever, certainly back-to-back, and also the first executive for the Detroit Lions. Mm-hmm. How does that rank in all of your achievements?
It's a great question. Obviously, I said when I first got this job that I felt a responsibility to set an example for young Black and brown boys, such as myself when I was young, for a symbol of hope, someone to look up to. So, I guess every milestone or accolade that comes along with it, it's just. Hopefully it's more hope and optimism for them to look at. I personally I don't stop and smell the flowers as much just because it's a constant, relentless climb. So when I first found out that I got it this year again, my assistant just gave me a letter and she wanted to kind of surprise me for it, but I was just reading it and skimming through it and I had something else on my mind, because I just got done my end of the season press conference, and I was trying to make sure that I said things to make sure that Dan Campbell got Coach of the Year. So that was kind of on my mind, and I was saying, well, look, I told the media, I said, look, it's hard to get 15 wins with a healthy roster, but we had all this interest. I don't know, basically, I don't know what Dan has to do to be Coach of the Year. So when she gave me the press release, it had, Kevin O'Connell as Coach of the Year. And so I started skimming through it and I was like, why is she giving me this Kevin O'Connell? And then I flipped the next page and then she had my name highlighted. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, pretty cool. And so, but it's back to looking at free agents. And so, I know I've always been told I probably should stop and smell the flowers a little bit more.
Well, it's etched in history now.
Yeah.
You're that first name, and you have some idols that have come before you that you've looked up to in your career, and you were kind of surprised by it.
Oh yeah, I was obviously Ozzie Newsome, the great GM of the Baltimore Ravens, was pretty much an idol to me. Actually, I saw him at the owners' meetings a couple of years ago, and I told him that, and he didn't know that. And I said, look, man, I had you on our vision board when me and my wife first got married, and you hoisted up that Super Bowl. Because he was the first really Black GM that I really knew about that was a Super Bowl winning, level, general manager. And I'm sure there's others, so I might get fact checked on that. But so, he's the one that I looked up to, but we didn't have a personal relationship or anything. So he thought it was cool when I told him that. But I've always just kind of looked up to him because he was an example for me, and he was a symbol of hope for me, and he was optimism for me. So hopefully I can continue to be a symbol of hope for other young.
Well, we've certainly watched, at least in the NFL, a lot of change over the last few decades, from a lot of work from athletes, from former players, those that work in the industry in the front office, to get more opportunity for African Americans. With that work that you've seen, where are we now versus maybe the last decade?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I remember when I got hired in 2021, I thought that we were making strides, especially on the general manager front. It quickly went from 2 Black general managers to 7, and then and then the number kept increasing. I do feel like we still need to have a lot more improvement on the head coach front. I know there's a lot of talented Black assistant coaches that are more than qualified and justified to be head coaches, and so we just got to continue to do our part in making sure that we're, just as I wanted to make sure that I had people in place to be in position to get interviews and get opportunities to become a general manager. I think Dan does a great job making sure that he has other black assistant coaches in positions to get opportunities. And it's not just about the title or anything like that, it's the actual development and the opportunity. And that's why I do think that's why the league does award the team with, a compensatory draft pick that does develop that GM or head coach, because it's not about they had this title, it's about, no, they actually went through the interview process, showed that they had the experience and they've been developed.
The pathway to become a general manager, I'm sure, is different for every single person that's ever had the job.
Yeah.
So going back and looking at your pathway, your degree from North Carolina A&T is in my industry, journalism.
Yeah.
So how do you go from a media relations intern to the general manager?
I actually think it was a perfect mesh between my passion of football and also had a passion for writing. And so my mom was in education for a long time. She's retired, and my grandmother, she was in education. So I come from a family of educators and a family of football. So like my grandfather was a long-time high school football coach, but he was also a principal at a high school. And my dad played in the NFL for a little while, and my uncle was a first-round draft pick here with the Detroit Lions, Luther Bradley.
Yeah.
My cousin was a first-round draft pick, for Florida State, Alex Barron. So I come from a football family, but
and you played too?
I played for North Carolina A&T as well. But my mom, my grandmother, my aunt, is a lot of educators and teachers. So I think just that blend kind of just came together. And so my mom recognized when I was in college, I started off in business, and I just didn't really know what to major in. My dad got into business when he got done playing football, so I was like, okay, I'll just go into business.
Yeah, whatever that is, whatever you'll be
But
doing.
my mom parents know their kids' strengths.
Yeah.
And I think my sister was more of the math and, she was more the numbers person. And my mom knew I was more of the writing and verbal person, so I'm kind of like struggling in like accounting class and statistics. And so my mom was like, Brad, why don't you just try PR? And I didn't even think about it. And I said, okay. So I just changed my major to PR.
Okay.
And sure enough, that's when my grades just soared, and I really loved what I was doing.
Okay.
I loved that major. And so I was just trying, when I got done playing football, I didn't have the skills to actually play in the NFL. But I said, look, how can I get into scouting? And how can I be in the NFL? And I couldn't get a job. I tried
as a scout.
Yeah, I reached out to every team, and writing out letters and stuff, and I didn't really get any bites. And
With
so
those eloquent writing skills.
I had a great resume. It looked great, but it's timing and who and opportunities just lines up. So I had to go back home, and I was at home in Tampa, Florida, working at Enterprise Rental Car, washing cars and renting cars, and but
contemplating life. Like, this is not what I wanted to do
all day. And so I got this shirt and tie on, washing cars and renting cars, and I'm thinking about football all day. And so this opportunity came about. My mom was working at University of South Florida, and she had a contact that knew a guy named Arthur Trish, who was the VP of Communications for the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
And so
thinking about football all the time, but this is your basketball team.
So, and then I was talking to my mom about it, and she's like, well, look, I know you're football, but at least you'll be in the sports world. And I said, true, because I like sports. It's not football, I like basketball, I like baseball, I like golf, I like hockey, I like any sport. So I went in and did the PR internship. It was called a media trainee position with the Hawks, but the cool thing about it was that Enterprise allowed me to work part-time at the Atlanta airport at the time. So I've always said one of the best things that I was given at that Hawks media trainee position is a free MARTA pass, because I was only able to afford.
And that's their public transportation.
That's the public transportation that'll take you all over the city of Atlanta.
Okay.
So you can only work 40 hours a week with the Hawks. So I had to kind of supplement what I was making to live. And so those of that know Atlanta, if you live inside the perimeter of 285, that's higher rent.
Oh, yeah.
So I can only afford to live outside of 285. So I'm living up in this area called Norcross. And that's kind of the furthest north spot of the MARTA rail. And the furthest south spot is the airport.
Okay.
So I do my training position with the Hawks, get off work and go down and take the MARTA pass. I take the MARTA system to the Enterprise at the airport, and I worked it to about 11, 12 o'clock.
Oh.
And then I would take the MARTA back to my house, back up there, and it worked out and it was cool. But
So how long did you spend there before you then took that awesome intern experience to the Rams?
I was there for a year.
Oh, that's it.
I was there for a year, yeah.
Okay.
So 2023, I graduated in 22. I started there in like the fall of 22, and then in 23, the NBA All-Star Game came to Atlanta, and a lot of the NFL PR directors came, and so my boss, who was black, he introduced me to other black PR directors in the NFL that was there, and he said, look, this young kid here, he just got done playing college football. I mean, he's been a good worker, boom, boom, boom. So I met with the PR director with the Rams, Dwayne Lewis, and did like a lunch interview, and he offered me internship to be a PR intern there.
Okay.
And so that's how I got to the Rams. And so I'm with the Rams, and I'm like in the NFL. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing like they're coming off this Super Bowl run, and they're a really good team, and it's Hall of Famers galore. And
this is
I
what,
see-
2003?
So this is 2003.
Okay.
So it's so I'm an intern, and it's
But you're in the mix.
I mean,
Your foot's in
Marshall
the door.
Faulk and Kurt Warner and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Orlando Pace, and I'm like, wow, this is it. But I'm doing media. I'm
Right.
setting up interviews.
Yeah.
So
this
making
gift for
copies.
scouting, did you always know you had it, or did you really hone this while you're, making your way up the ranks with the Rams?
Obviously, I never wrote like a scouting report or anything. I just loved watching players, and I think when I really knew I fell in love with like the actual scouting process is in the 8th grade. I skipped school to watch the draft,
Wow.
and when the draft came on television, I was the first time I really was seeing like, wow, these like all these papers of all these prospects, and they're showing these highlights on these players, and I'm like, wow. And then that's when I started kind of looking at like height, weight, speed, and defensive linemen, running fast, and I was like, wow. And so that's kind of where it probably started. But I was still playing football, so that was kind of a side thing. But all my friends in college always say that they're not surprised that
Really?
that I became this just because of how I always talked about football. And
So was, this your goal, to become a general manager? You talked about that vision board,
Yeah.
because the pathway, you could have ended up in any particular role there with the Rams. You were there for,
Sure.
what, almost 20 years?
yeah,
18
I think
years?
18 years.
And it was
yeah.
just a steady moving up. So what was that moment when they're like, oh, this guy knows how to scout players?
Yeah, so I had received an opportunity. So I did my PR internship, and then I got a good relationship with our running backs coach at the time. His name was Wilbert Montgomery, old great running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. And there was a undrafted free agent that came from my school, North Carolina A&T, named Troy Pelshak, that played for the Rams. And Wilbert said, "You went to A&T?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "You know Troy Pelshak?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, that was like kind of my mentor, because we're both defensive linemen. And he goes, "Oh yeah, Troy was a great kid, yada." So we kind of kicked off this relationship and bond, and then late at night, I just started helping Wilbert Montgomery do certain things. He was a running backs coach, so he had to do the wristbands for the running backs for all the plays and formations. And so I would just kind of type those things up for him, and I'll do whatever I can to kind of get in this football side, because when I took that internship, I did want to get into scouting. I knew I could do PR, and I loved writing, and I post stories for the website. So eventually, Wilbert told our GM at the time, Charlie Army, that he knows this kid in PR that would be a good scout.
Wow.
And so
your story is all about relationship building, seizing opportunities.
yeah, but I also think it's I think it's work ethic and drive and consistency.
And also just a gift. I mean, what you were able to do at the Rams, I mean, you set them up to be Super Bowl teams, and you're certainly doing that here.
I was part of that. I was part of that. But, one of the things when I got the opportunity with the Rams to get over to scouting is I had to pass out the media clips. Nowadays in PR departments in the NFL, it's evolved. Everything's digital and everything is emailed and PDF'd. And no, we had to actually print out, Xerox everything, staple it, and pass it out to all the offices. And so I had to pass out to the GM's office every morning. And so it was that one morning I passed it out at the same time, and Charlie goes, hey, I talked to Wilbert, and he said, you're interested, so come by my office, on Friday. And I was like, whoa. And I'm just like shocked. So I go by, and Friday's supposed to be a dress down day. And I come Friday with like a shirt and tie
You're
on.
like,
I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to get offered this job. I don't know if my boss going to. I didn't even tell my boss.
But you want to look the part.
I didn't tell Dwayne that I was interviewing for this thing. Because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. So I do it, and I show him all my writing samples from what I did for the game day publications for the Rams. And so I want to show him that I can write.
Yeah.
Like I can write, but I have a passion for football. I love football, but I can write. And so he looked at it, and then sure enough, during that time, Dwayne Lewis, my boss, walks in the office and he didn't even know, and so he thinks I'm in trouble.
Oh.
And so Charlie's on the phone, and he says, he gets off the phone, he said, hey, Dwayne, Brad's gonna be my intern in scouting after he gets done with you. And I was like, I am? And I was like, okay.
So you just handle that
and
cool, calm, collected.
It kind of just took off from there.
Certainly has taken off.
So I have a lot of gratitude and thanks for the people that gave me opportunities, and that's why I'm big on making sure I give others opportunities. A lot of people come to me and or send me resumes and say I just want an opportunity, and I try to look at all of them because I know.
Well, you seem really calm and humble, but I did bring along some, some of your moments, your memorable moments with me as the game ends. This one's in Houston. But this one takes the cake. This is the win against Kansas City, in Kansas City, and you're high-fiving the fans, screaming, emotional. And I watched this and I'm like, it's more than just winning the game at that moment.
Yeah.
Can you describe the outburst of emotion?
Yeah. My close friends and family, and my coworkers, I'm a very emotional, passionate person when these kind of moments come, whether it's in the draft room or we just drafted one of, our favorite players, or, just sign a big free agent, or, win a game, or stuff like that. But it's not like you get so much emotion from the actual game and winning the game. Our fans truly bring that out of me.
Yeah.
Because you start off with that Houston game, and I had one of my good friends from college go to that game, and that was his first away game he ever been to. He's been to games here in Detroit, and he couldn't stop talking about it. He said he's never seen a visiting team's fan base invade a stadium that way. And I was telling him, I said, no, that's every week. Right. And so the sacrifices and the passion that our fans give to us, it just brings it out of me. I just like to show love, and it just, I don't know, they're so passionate, and they're like, I don't know, it's something that it comes out of me, and it's truly them that bring it out of me.
There's another one where you're in the elevator.
So
and then we talked a little bit about just being in the war room, which we'll get to that in a second, but I gotta go back to the elevator.
So the elevator one, so me and Dan, we've been through a lot when we first got here. And I think that was just a culmination of, I was just watching that confetti drop down.
And this is the Rams game,
this
right?
This is the Rams game. Just watching that confetti drop down, and I'm like, we just won our first playoff game. And I'm like, and it just all came to me, the culmination of all the darkness that we went through, and I think it all came out of me in that elevator. And that's the best way I can explain it.
I love that. And then this is just some more of that emotion you described. This is the war room. It's in there. You've just been, get off the phone. Do you remember any of these moments? Like which player it was?
I do. So that first one you just showed, that was our first draft pick, and that was Penei Sewell. Yeah, and
that was emotional on both sides.
It was a weird, because of COVID, it was a weird draft process. Like, we couldn't really do normal on-site visits, you know, top 30 visits. We didn't have a combine, so it was a different kind of, everything was remote. It was weird. So we had just did a Zoom with Penei, me and Dan did, probably a week prior. Wow. So Penei was just very fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
And the more and more me and Dan started thinking about him being a part of it. And when we got the opportunity, you know, we just couldn't be more ecstatic. I'll never forget, we were just waiting on the clock, and then we saw Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins, that was picked right before us, pop up on the screen, and we just erupted. And we were just like, how perfect is this? Wow. And so proud of him. He's just been
he's amazing.
He's just been a vivid illustration of what we want to be about. Yeah. And so proud of him. But yeah, that's where that came from.
Well, that's a special one.
Yeah.
What is it that you look for? I mean, there's a lot of great athletes out there, but you just seem to have this eye for something more.
Yeah, it's the intangibles. It's the intangible qualities of a player. I talk about all the time, talent is easy to identify. Mm-hmm. It's easy to find. I talk to our scouts all the time about, our scouts want to tell me about this talent, and this guy's big and he's strong, and okay, I get that. Mm-hmm. You know, all these other hundreds and thousands are big and strong too, but who has the makeup and drive and determination and competitiveness and passion for the game that we're looking for? And that's how we built our locker room. That's how me and Dan built this thing. And that's why it's grit all over this building, because this game is really hard.
Yeah.
Like, this game is really hard to play. And it takes a certain person, takes a special human being. And it's not just about how much talent you have. Mm-hmm. It's about how much determination, you know, how you're gonna face adversity, and are you gonna sink down in a hole? Are you gonna just rise to the occasion? And do you have the mental toughness and mental fortitude to do that? And so those intangible qualities, that's what we look for, and that's kind of been the separation. In my opinion, I think that's a separation between being a great player and just being just an
So is that intangible
player.
Something you would see when the player's not even on the field? Maybe how they're behaving on the sideline.
Oh, absolutely,
how
yeah.
they're interacting with the teammates.
It's almost more so what the fans and stuff are not seeing. You know, we also say, you know, yeah, games are won during the week. Like, how much work did you put in during the week? The game can be a lot easier.
That makes me think of someone like Amon-Ra.
Yes, yes, he's look, same draft, and he's another one that's been rewarded, because he's another one that's just like Penei. You know, he's just been a vivid example of what we want our program to be modeled after. But yes, Amon-Ra, I never forget when he became captain, when he was chose captain this past season, he said, he goes, I want us to be the best practicing team in the NFL. And it's just like Amon-Ra to say that, but it's true. If you're the best practicing team in the NFL, then you're probably going to be one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah. Because
practice is hard. And so if you can dominate practice, then the games will be a lot easier. And so that's what, and me and Dan are just aligned that way in terms of what we look for in football players.
But there's a lot of risk taking. There's a lot of hope, faith.
Yeah.
I remember for the Jahmyr Gibbs, you got a lot of criticism. What are you doing getting a running back? We need defensive players.
Yeah, it's look, he's a special football player.
Yeah, we know that. We know that now, but you weren't.
The whole look, you
aware of
want
that
to
in the
add you want to be able to be in position to add elite players.
Yeah.
And when you're in position to add elite players, I don't care what position he plays. If he's an elite player, or if you have forecasted, because a lot of forecasting, like you said, kind of hoping, guessing, but if you've done all the work and you've compiled all the information, it kind of adds to the confidence you have to making that selection. but you see, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's an elite football player.
Yes, he is.
It doesn't matter, and that's probably, I'm trying not to go off on a tangent, but that's kind of where when you hear the naysayers from the outside world, I always say, like, look, give the draft a little bit more respect, because we've been working on this for 9 months and we have all this information, and when the outside world been kind of working on it for maybe a couple of months and they don't have much information.
And we're probably just talking,
And
really
so
doing any type of analysis of players.
It's a little bit, it's just, and when I say more respect, it's like, it's not just about, like, you don't just stack a position. Like, this player plays this position, so move this player down. This player plays this position, so move this player up. The draft's not that easy. It's not that easy.
Very complex.
It is a lot more work. So that's when you do the work, that's when a Jahmyr Gibbs does come to light,
It also seems like this secret work that you're doing when it comes to who you're looking for. I mean, that has to be a well-kept secret. What you see in a Jahmyr Gibbs, other teams may not have picked up on yet.
Yeah.
He may not get chosen that high if not for seeing that.
Yeah.
So what is the work like of a general manager when it's the off season? There's all these months. What do you do day to day?
Yeah, I know it's called the off season because, like, football games aren't being played, but for a general manager, actually, the quote unquote off season is a lot more busier than during the season. It's a lot more hectic. It's a lot more time consuming because, you got free agency, and then you have draft, and you have a lot of other things happening. You're getting ready for the off-season program to get started. You have the combine. I mean, it's a lot going on, but it's purely the player acquisition process, and it is just constant meetings, constant film, just from the morning till night, and it's a constant just kind of grind through the process. You have to be very organized and make sure that your process is very, I guess call it clean and ready to be, you just kind of stick to your process, trust it, and what we do is we always try to evolve our process, and that's really the best way I can explain it, but it's a lot more hectic and time consuming.
And so we're sitting here in Black History Month, and you mentioned Ozzie Newsome. Are there certain people in Black history, whether sports or not, that have served as inspirations for you in your life?
Absolutely. Look, when you talk about Black leaders and pioneers that I've always looked to, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, come to the forefront, and I'm still in amazement because when I listen to their speeches to this day, and I know we're in Black History Month, but I was raised to, acknowledge it year round in our household when we were growing up, and that I'm still to this day with our children, is just make sure that it's acknowledged and recognized year round. But hearing what they used to say back in the 1960s and seeing it so prevalent now, it's the ultimate, like, they were special. They were, they were prophets. They were, they just had different, Martin Luther King was talking about automation back in the 1960s, and now here we are now, so things like that, it's just, it's fascinating It's always reminders that I look back and I listen to their stuff, and I'm still in amazement. So even Black History Month in general, I think is there an evolution that's coming.
You mentioned your family.
Yeah.
Tell me about your family.
Yeah, so my mom, obviously, my whole family, my whole immediate family went to North Carolina A&T, actually. So my mom and my dad met at North Carolina A&T, and my mom, she worked in the education field. She was at University of South Florida for almost 30 years. She's retired, and then my dad, obviously played football. He was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in '71 in the 5th round at North Carolina A&T, offensive lineman. And he played for a few years, and then fortunately passed away in 2015. And then my sister, she works for FAA in Washington.
Okay.
But it's been the four of us, and still a very close-knit family to this day. But they were very big inspirations to me growing up. They were very, again, they always reminded us, about the issues that surrounded race, like in the workplace or in the world, and it just made us very aware. Mm-hmm. So it was a small examples that I attribute a lot of my success to them, because when I first got that internship in scouting, there was like 4 other scouting interns or scouting assistants, and I was the only black. And my parents, used to always tell me, when you're in those situations, you got to be twice as better, and that's how you have to perform. And so it was things like that I kind of attribute a lot of my success to.
And you're married, you have children.
Yep. So my wife Lisa, we met. So I moved to Atlanta. My wife graduated from Clark University, and so she stayed there and worked in Atlanta. And when I was a young scout, I got promoted to be the Southeast Scout. And back then, that was like the scouting area job, because now you're talking about Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Auburn and Miami and Florida.
Yeah.
And so that was like a big deal back then. So I moved to Atlanta just so I can be kind of centrally located within the Southeast, and that's when me and my wife met. And we're coming up on 10 years this summer, and we have 2 children, and we're up here in Detroit. We didn't know what to expect in terms of living here. We didn't spend a lot of time up this way. Most of our family's down in the Southeast. So we came here and we absolutely love the city. We love the community. We got used to the cold very, very quickly.
Well, you have no choice.
Yes.
What about Detroit hosting the NFL draft? You talked about watching the draft when you were in the 8th grade and seeing it being hosted here, your football home city.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I thought it was just a huge opportunity for the city of Detroit and all the small businesses and just businesses in general. Ever since I moved here, I've always thought, I was like, man, this downtown, like Detroit can host a Super Bowl. Like, cause I think the downtown is perfect for it. And I know weather's, affecting and all that kind of stuff. But, I just it's such a great downtown. It's got a lot of character, just very like the restaurants, the hotels. It's just, I don't know. It's got a lot of culture and character.
Yeah.
And so I was so glad that when we got the opportunity to host the draft, that was being able to put on display. Mm-hmm. And I was not surprised that we set the attendance record for hosting the NFL draft.
We blew every estimation away by hundreds of thousands of people.
I just look at, look, our fans, I know people talk about fans travel.
Yeah.
Oh, that fan base travels. No, our fans, they take over. Mm-hmm. And
it literally impacts the game.
Yes. I want to say when we're down at Houston, they had a false start. We've been at stadiums, we've been at away games where the home team comes out the tunnel to booze. That's how strong. So knowing that, I'm so glad that they were able to actually show the world what Detroit was all about, what this fan base is. A sports city.
Yeah.
It's a sports city, and I thought that was really cool.
And I know you're well aware how much this city and our love for our Detroit Lions, how far we want to go. It has been so much fun these last few seasons with you and with Dan and all of the leadership and the players. It's just been a ride. Yeah. So now you're looking ahead to next season. You're going to have new coaches, but a lot of the same players, and of course the head coach and you.
Yep.
So what can we look forward to?
You know, just to become better, just to get better. And that was always the case. You know, every single year it was like, well, what's the next step? What's the next step? Well, the next step was continually to improve every single year. And we were doing that to 3-13-1, to 9-8, to 12 wins, to 15. Like, we've been doing that. This was the first year that we did not actually advance further than from a game standpoint when we lost to the NFC, to the 49ers NFC Championship the previous year. We didn't make it to the NFC Championship this year. So, look, me and Dan will do the necessary work to get better. And after that, gut-wrenching loss, there was nothing else to do. You could pout about it for the next month or the next 2 months, but there's nothing else to do but get back to work and get better. And so we will definitely do that. Yeah, it will be some new faces. That's going to be every single year. That's the nature of the business. But as long as me and Dan are here, we're big on sticking to our identity and really not compromising that. So whether it's player acquisition, coaches, we'll be just fine.
So how about hobbies? It seems like you live and breathe football. So is there something completely non-football related that interests you?
Yeah, look, this job is a relentless climb, and there's not a lot of time to do much else. But I will say, the older I've gotten, with little children, I've tried to, make more time and try to find that work-life balance a little bit better.
Good for you.
But what I've always, I've always loved golf.
Oh, good.
I'm not very good at it because I can only play during the summertime.
Yeah, I was going to say it requires time.
But I've always loved golf, and I love reading. And I've always been an avid reader. I won't say always. Probably when I got into like my late 20s, early 30s is kind of when I really kind of had a fascination. Really just a lot of psychology books, a lot of behavioral economics books. Just because I feel like that's very relatable to what we do. Yeah. Because we're human beings, just evaluating other human beings.
Yeah. And in a very mentally, physically, emotionally charged industry.
Yes. So a lot of the psychology books and the behavioral economic stuff is always kind of just felt like it's given me a little bit of edge in our process. And it's been beneficial. But I just like research. I like just research. And it was like just this morning, I was driving out, I knew we were doing this interview. And I was like, wow, well, so Carter G. Woodson that, basically created Black History Month in the 1970s. In the 1920s, it was Negro History Week. It was just a week.
Right.
And so then 50 years later, it evolves to the 1970s, where it's a whole month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, now we're 50 years later, what is the next evolution? When's the next evolution? And what's the next Black leader, Black pioneer? And what is that evolution?
Yeah, what does it look like? Yeah.
But I love research. I love reading. I just think that, it goes back to the old PR, journalism and communication days.
So you have a 4 and a 6-year-old. So are they going to be athletes too, or the education
You know
side?
what? I've always said I'm going to put every racket and every ball in my kids' hands. I read this book called Range a few years ago, and it kind of just taught me a lot of breakdown of the specialization of child sports. And so after I read that book, I said, I'm just going to put every racket, every ball in
let them
my
choose.
children's hands and says whatever because I don't know. I've never played hockey, but we're up here in Detroit, and it's like hockey nation, and it's like I have the opportunity to put a hockey stick in a puck and see if he's good at it. So
now,
we'll
if
just see
they
what
grow up
sticks.
watching football and dad all the time, how much interaction are you having with the players, week to week, and you bring your family along?
Yeah, so my family pretty much comes to every home game. It's hard to do away games because our kids are so little. Because that's I can hardly stay up for, like, if we play on a Sunday afternoon and it's a Sunday night game, if it's a Monday night game, I can't even stay up.
And you guys had a lot of night games.
We had a lot of primetime games. So my wife had to be very creative in terms of, how she was going to handle the kids. And sometimes they just can't go just because it's a school night and they got to go. Or sometimes kind of like they'll do a halftime thing, like stay up till halftime. But they always know when the games are going on. So there's a little bit of a compromise that we had to do. But they're always around the game. I try not to make it, just a football only household. So just try to make sure, and me and my wife just make sure that they have a lot of different activities that have nothing to do with football, and a lot of exposure to different things.
How about you as GM? I mean, are you down here in the practice facility? Are you interacting with the players, throwing balls?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't work out with them. I've always said, like, when you do like intramural sports, like recreational sports, like I never want to just come in with like a torn ACL or something because it's going to limit my job. But so I don't work out with them, but a lot of communication with them. Obviously it's a lot of things. Like they're human beings. They're human beings and they have lives, and so things might come up, whether off the field, personal. The NFL's a business. These guys have agents, contracts. They might have a question about anything, and that's why me and Dan, our doors are always open. And so I think that communication is important. I think those relationships are very important because they have to trust us, and we don't hide anything. Obviously, Dan is very authentic, and we try to be open books, but I think those relationships are important. And look, I love to learn, so I learn so much from these players.
Right.
Just different things that I'm the old guy now, and they're
at
young.
What, 45?
So they're young and they have all these different interests, and the world is changing. The world is changing at a rapid rate. And,
now, you mentioned you're an open book. Are you going to tell me who you're going to be scouting for this year that you're really looking to try and get in the draft?
We'll be looking for the best football player that's going to fit the Detroit Lions.
With all the intangibles.
Yes, that has all the intangible qualities. So, yes.
Who does fit the Detroit Lions? This is a unique team.
Oh, well, you mean are the players on our team?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much our team. I mean, I will say, like, the established leaders, the captains, I think those are, the easy recognizable. They're captains for a reason. Jared Goff.
You guys go way back.
We go way back. He's a talented quarterback, but he's been through some stuff. And I think that's why he's where he's at now, and I think that's why he's such a great fit for this city.
How about you talked about the fans? People yelling Jared Goff everywhere, at hockey games, at basketball games. What do you guys think of that around here?
I never thought. I guess you can't put anything past our fans, but no, me and my wife went to our first Red Wings game this year. Steve Eiserman, he was very gracious, and you start hearing those chants about Jared Goff, and I'm like, he's not even in the building. And but I'm so happy for him. Just very resilient. He came in, and again, 2021 was a rough year, and me and Dan are all about earning it, and Jared had to earn those chants.
But he had you because you were part of that whole acquisition of bringing him from the Rams, where you scouted him, right?
Yep. So scouted him. I'll never forget. I saw him. We were me and my wife were living in Atlanta, and I think Cal was playing Stanford, and went out there and saw him for the first time live playing Stanford. Actually, it was at Stanford, and it was supposed to be this big Saturday night showdown, and went out there and he played well, and it was like wow, this kid's legit. and we ended up drafting him when I was with the Rams, and he had a lot of early success. Number 1 overall pick. Traded a lot of assets to go up and get him, and had a lot of other shots. Reached the Super Bowl, playoffs, and reached the Super Bowl at an early age. But he was such a young player coming out. He came out early, and he had this narrative with him that when he went to Cal, I think they only won 1 game his freshman year. Then he kind of got him to 500, and then the next year, they went to a bowl game. And so, I'm not surprised about what he's done here. Is that he's a very mentally and physically tough person. He had to go through adversity, and then we've gotten better and better and better since he's been here. So
those are those intangibles.
Absolutely.
You can have a long arm,
so
but it
yeah,
takes
but
more than that.
Jared, Panay, St. Brown, the Frank Ragnow, Alex Anzalone, like those guys are
It's a
all
deep
examples.
roster.
And again, you could talk about the adversity all of them have gone through.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's why we are who we are right now.